today one of our data structures and algorithms with C placement series. Today, we will revise some important C programming concepts and learn about time and space complexity. We will also solve a few practice problems together. First, let's talk about arrays. An array is a collection of elements of the same data type, stored in contiguous memory. Arrays are zero-indexed, which means the first element is at index 0, the second at index 1, and so on. If the first element is stored at memory address 1000, and the data type takes 4 bytes, the next element will be at address 1004, then 1008, and so on. Next, pointers. A pointer is a variable that stores the memory address of another variable. If you have an integer variable named x with value 10, a pointer to x will hold its address. Using the dereference operator, we can access the value stored at that address. In C, arrays and pointers are closely related. The name of an array acts as a pointer to its first element. Now, functions. In C, you can pass data to functions in two ways: pass by value and pass by reference. In pass by value, a copy of the data is sent to the function. Changes made inside the function do not affect the original variable. In pass by reference, we pass the address of the variable. Changes made through that address will modify the original variable. Let's move to structures, enums, and typedef. A structure allows us to group variables of different types together under one name. For example, a student structure can have a name, age, and marks. Enums, short for enumerations, let us create a set of named integer constants, making code more readable. Typedef allows us to create an alias for a data type, making code cleaner and easier to work with, especially for structures. Now, the most important topic for the day: time and space complexity. Time complexity tells us how the running time of an algorithm grows as the size of the input increases. Space complexity tells us how much memory an algorithm uses. There are 3 common notations. Big O notation represents the worst case. Omega notation represents the best case. Theta notation represents the average case. For example, linear search has a best case of omega of 1 when the element is at the start. Its worst case is big O of n when the element is at the end or not present. Binary search has a worst case of big O of log n. Bubble sort has a worst case of big O of n squared. Now let's work on today's practice problems. The first problem is to reverse an array. The logic is simple. We use 2 pointers, one starting from the beginning and one from the end. We swap the elements at these positions, then move the start pointer forward and the end pointer backward. We keep doing this until the 2 pointers meet. Here's the code in C. Declare an array and 2 integers, start equal to 0 and end equal to size -1. While start is less than end, swap the values at rStart and rEnd. Then increment start and decrement end. When the loop ends, the array will be reversed. The second problem is to find the largest and smallest elements in an array. We can do this in one pass. First, set both largest and smallest to the first element of the array. Then loop through each element. If the current element is greater than largest, update largest. If the current element is smaller than smallest, update smallest. At the end, largest will hold the maximum value and smallest will hold the minimum value in the array. The third problem is to count the occurrences of a given element in an array. The logic is straightforward. Ask the user to input the target element. Initialize a counter to 0. Loop through each element of the array. If the element matches the target, increment the counter. At the end, print the counter value. This tells us how many times the target element appears in the array. That's all for day 1. We revised arrays, pointers, functions, structures, enums, typedef, and complexity analysis. We also solved 3 practice problems. Remember, complexity is the math behind data structures and algorithms. Master it early, and the rest of the journey will be much easier.